So I never really saw myself as spiritual, and tarot was like, oh, what? Welcome to It's a Witchy Life podcast, where we explore the world of witchcraft and tarot to elevate your practice and live your best witchy life. This is new. I am basically wanting to talk about certain topics, and I thought, you know what, might as well sort of do it in a podcast form because that is something that I found I just really like. I've done podcasts in the past, but yeah, today I want to talk about my witchy practice, what that means to me, how I sort of got to this point, and what I'm expecting or what I'm hoping for my witchy practice moving forward. So to sort of start talking about the beginning of my witchy practice, I really have to talk about how I started my tarot practice. So I was like a little bit into astrology at some point. I remember actually when that happened. I watched Mile Higher podcast with Kendall Ray and her husband Josh, and they had Kathleen Light, a beauty YouTuber, over on their podcast, and they talked all about astrology. So I was like, ooh, that's actually interesting. So I started looking more into astrology. I actually bought an astrology book. I still have it, but I'm selling it. It's The Signs by Caroline Faulkner. And I read up about astrology, I got more interested in it, and then I thought, and every time I want to learn something, I go to YouTube. So I went to YouTube to look up people who did and talked about astrology. And then I found this woman, Jessica or Jess, over on Witchy Life. That's the name of her channel. And she did like every week, and she still does them, like forecasts through astrology. But she didn't just use astrology, she also used tarot. And that was the first time that I actually actively remember seeing tarot in action. And at first I was super skeptic. I was like, okay, astrology feels like it's very different from tarot. And I thought astrology was already like almost like too far from my bed, but like approachable enough for me that I was like, okay, that's like good with how I feel, because up until this point, I never saw myself as a very spiritual person. I always saw myself as super down to earth, not religious at all. I was brought up like Christian, Protestant Christian, but I like moved past that fairly quickly, fairly early on into puberty. And so I never really saw myself as spiritual, and tarot was like, oh, what? And then I just thought, okay, she seems to be really passionate about astrology, and everything that she said about astrology so far resonates. So let me just keep watching this video and see what she does with the tarot. And I was so mind blown. Like, if you are into tarot, you know what it can do for you and how crazily, insanely, and scarily accurate readings can be sometimes. And that was that specific video that I watched from her. She was so accurate, and my mind was blown. So I started looking up more about tarot, and then I eventually decided to get my own tarot deck. A big part of my journey was also being part of the Discord server from Mile Higher, actually. Still part of that Discord server, and that is where I talked to people about astrology and about potentially getting into tarot, and they encouraged me. They were super nice, and I ended up getting a tarot deck, not telling my boyfriend about it, and doing readings for people in the Discord, and it was so fun. I started learning the cards. There were some cards that were easy for me to learn and that I already felt a very, very strong emotional connection to, and there were some cards that I found a lot harder to learn. And that is sort of how I started my tarot practice, but I still didn't really see myself as spiritual. I felt like tarot was very practical because you just pull a card and you know what that card means, and you can apply that to your situation, your question, your life. So I felt like it was very practical, and I still think that that is my approach. When it comes to tarot, I do have a very practical approach to tarot. I am a teacher, so now that I am also teaching tarot in my online course, I want to make it very simple, and I want to simplify the way that you can read tarot so it's easier to teach, it's easier to learn, and it's easier to do. So that is why I came up with like my 2-step system for learning tarot. And like I said, feels very practical. So recently, I've been watching a lot of witchy videos on witchcraft. I've been looking at a lot of books about witchcraft because I feel like I want to move further within my practice. My witchy practice so far has been tarot, a little bit of astrology, and I wouldn't necessarily call them spells, but I also wouldn't necessarily not call them spells. It was more like manifesting, so like writing down what I wanted to manifest, but I wasn't really very consistent with it. I have done some candle intentions for manifestations alongside journaling, but that is sort of the extent with it. But right now I'm feeling really called to do more. I've talked about this on my channel before, but right now I am sick at home from work with burnout. So my brain is sort of going all different directions while also sitting still and just like being terrified in the corner of a dark room. Like that is sort of what my brain feels like right now. And the idea of a witchy practice, the idea of witchcraft, of focusing my intentions, meditating, I really, really, really want to get into. I always try it. I have such a hard time with meditating. It feels weird, and this is also why I think a witchy practice is gonna help me. But the burnout isn't coming from nowhere. I am always stressed. I am always tense. My body, my shoulders, like you can see that I am crooked. One shoulder is higher up than the other. I am just always tense. I am always like my body is always crooked. There's just always stress in my body. So and I'm always thinking about 100 things at the same time. And that, of course, contributed to my burnout. So it's not something that I brag about. It's something that I share because it's something that I want to work on by meditating. I would love to get more into yoga. I want to work out a little bit more. I haven't been able to because of my burnout, but I've been feeling like I really, really need it. And right now the sun is actually shining. So after this, I might go on a little walk in the sun because I think it will be good for me. And actually, I think it might have been while I was on a walk in the sunshine with my dog, and I was just looking around me, and I decided that I was gonna have a walk in nature. So I was walking around, I was looking at the different plants, the different flowers, the trees. I am horrible at identifying trees and plants and flowers. So I was like looking at them, and I just had this overwhelming sense that I need to dive deeper into what a witchy practice would look like for me. So I did. I looked at paganism like as a religion. I looked at Wicca as a religion. I looked at just witchcraft in general, green witchcraft, hearth, I don't know, witchcraft. I looked at all sorts of different types of witchy practices of people online. Folk witchcraft I also looked at, which is something that really intrigues me. So what I did, I have 2 notebooks. I have this little small one, and this is what I called like my book of shadows. And then I have this one, which I called my grimoire, because when I started out with this journal, I did like whole pages with information understanding paganism, because that was something that I was exploring. But then I was like, yeah, this is like journaling about something that I want to explore. So I feel like this is more like a book of shadows. I also did an entire spread on Dutch history and Dutch folk magic and like people, because I was wanting to figure out, okay, what if I wanted to dive more into folk magic? Because that is something that I've seen a lot of people do. A lot of people get into the history of the people here, and what are their like habits, their traditions, all that sort of stuff. But if I wanted to do that, I first had to dive into history. I found out that the Roman Empire, I live in the Netherlands, I live in a province, South Holland. I'm not going to try to dox myself. And the Nether Germanic, or the limes, the border of the Roman Empire is like right on where I live. So where I live, where I've been brought up, is pretty much within the Roman Empire, or was within the Roman Empire. So in that time, people here would probably, like my ancestors, would probably have worshipped the Roman gods. But then there were also a lot of Germanic influences here where I live. So I was like, and there was, because this was like the furthest from Rome, I feel like maybe, and there are, like, I go back and forth on this, because I feel like there was a lot more Germanic influences within my region than necessarily Roman influences. But that also is a little bit of a problem, because there is not really a lot of information about Germanic paganism, because they didn't really write things down. Most of the sources that we have about this time were from the Romans, but they didn't really paint these people in the most flattering light, because they would call them like barbarians. So then I looked at, after the or still I guess within the Roman Empire, there was at a certain point one of the, I don't know the English name, but like one of the rulers, the leaders, got converted to Christianity. So everybody in his empire had to become Christian. So then Christianity, Catholicism, I think it's called, got really big here. And then throughout the Middle Ages, there was in the south of the Netherlands, Catholicism that was really big. And then the north of the Netherlands was more Protestant Christian. And I live like kind of right on the border. Like I live in South Holland. So I guess technically I'm like south. But I personally was brought up Protestant Christian. And then, let me see, I wrote a lot of things down. Then in the 4th century, there was like a big move where a lot of tribes were like sort of coming and going within the Low Countries. You had the Anglo-Saxons, you had the Franks, the Frisians, and those all worshipped like Germanic gods, like Woden, Donar, Tyr, but there was a lot of overlap. Like they are definitely different from Norse gods and goddesses in the Norse pantheon, but there was a lot of overlap also. So that is sort of where I was like, okay, this is what I find super interesting, right? The pantheons of different gods and goddesses. I find, I don't know if I necessarily believe that these gods and goddesses are real, but I love the idea how it sort of came to be, that the people saw all these wonders of nature where they thought the ocean was like so magical, so beautiful, that it couldn't just exist. It had to be something of a god. And that thunder was so magical, that was such a magical thing from nature, that it couldn't just be nature. It had to be something of a god. And I really like that idea of appreciating nature so much, and sort of seeing it as something of a higher power. I think that is really beautiful, and that is something that I would love to explore more. If I look at a pantheon that I really resonate with, I think it's mostly two. I always have been so interested in the Greek pantheon, the Greek gods and goddesses. That is something that I have always found so fascinating. I'm trying to stay away from words like mythology, because I know that there are people who truly believe in this and it's not just myths to them. So I'm trying to use the word pantheon. I hope I'm using it correctly. But that is something that I always have been fascinated with. But also finding out that there was like a lot of Germanic paganism here. And even though Germanic and Norse paganism, the pantheons, like I said, aren't the exact same, I do feel a lot more connected to the Norse pantheon than the Germanic necessarily. So those are the two pantheons that I will be exploring. And yeah, other things that I want to explore are like folklore, folk stories from around here. So within the Netherlands, we have a lot as well. I have all the Dutch words here, so I could like list them out, but it doesn't really make sense if you're not Dutch yourself. But there are a bunch here, a bunch of stories that I want to look up. I also really want to read the Grimm's stories, even though it's not Dutch, it is still Germanic, it's still within this sort of area here within Europe. And I personally was brought up with a lot of these stories too, so they do have a very big impact on my childhood, and I assume on my ancestors as well. And if not, then at least it's entertaining to read and to get to know all the stories. Let's see, what else did I write down in my grimoire? Yeah, I sort of made I'm going to show you little drawings of what I think that my craft would look like, and these are at least like things that I want to explore, that I want to read about, that I want to not necessarily like just try out for funsies, but that I want to really dive deep into and explore, if that makes sense. So the first thing is the folklore stories. Like I said, reading the book of like the Grimm stories. I want to read the stories from my like home country. I want to read about folklore. Then the second thing, what I already talked about, is working with deity energy. So a couple of deities that I have been exploring and that I am interested in learning more about is, first of all, Sol. And I did do a tarot reading when I was working on my little grimoire page about Sol, doing the like research. And I did a reading, and the first card that came up was the Sun. So that was a really nice sort of, I don't know, full circle moment. I don't know what to call it. But I felt really validated in my practice, in my what I was doing. I'm also intrigued by Freya, another Norse goddess. Then Gaia is the goddess of earth in the Greek pantheon, and I have always felt very connected to the idea of Gaia. I want to learn about Frau Holle, who is Germanic, but she has been a part of my childhood, I feel like. We have this beautiful theme park here in the Netherlands called the Efteling, and it's like Disney, but different. And Frau Holle is I'm pretty sure she's there too, and that is how I got to know about her story, and I want to learn more about her as well. Then we also have Nehalenia, and she is from Zeeland, a province here in the Netherlands, and she is thought to be the goddess of that sailors would pray to when they were to travel, for like safe travels. those are the main deities that I'm thinking of looking into and potentially working with. But yeah, like I said, I'm really new at this. I'm not just gonna dive deep into or like dive straight into worshipping and working with a deity. That's not really how I plan on going about this. I really want to learn more about the pantheons and all of that. And then the third part of what I am hoping for my craft is spell work. Mainly herbalism is something that I'm super excited about. Like I want to have my own little garden. I want to grow mint, lavender, chamomile, rosemary, maybe even valerian if I can. And I want to make my own. First of all, I want to make my own oils, so herbal oils, and then I want to make those oils into like salves or balms for like my hands and stuff, so I can rub it into my hands as more of a balm than an oil. I think that is something that I would rather work with. I also want to do, let's see, what did I write down? Like I want to work with sort of amulets, and I did do some spells already with this ring that has a black crystal in it. I actually don't know what crystal it is. I definitely have to go back to I bought it from a market and they are here every Friday, so I definitely have to go back and ask. And I made an amulet out of this ring that I got from my sisters-in-law when they went to Scotland. So this is a Scottish ring. And then there are some other folk magic things like knot magic. There are some things called like wenselinte or like wish ribbons, I guess. That is a tradition here. I want to learn more about the local flowers that grow here, so that if I want to do like spells like oils or other types of spells, that I can use flowers that literally grow in the town where I live. So that is sort of what I'm hoping for when it comes to that. So yeah, things that I want to like make are salves, oils. I want to do like a sort of a cooking pot on the stove that first of all is going to smell really great and make my house smell great, but also is going to have some protective properties, if you will. Ooh, so that is, you know what? I can actually also show you, I wanted to round this out, but I can also show you my little book of shadows. This is so cute and I love it. This is a Moleskine, I think it's just an art journal, a pocket edition. So what I have in here, I wrote down my birth chart. I wrote down information on moon phases. I don't know if you can tell, but I am really more of a sun girly than a moon girly. Like I appreciate the moon. I think it's gorgeous. And I think that there's a magic about how like the moon phases. I think it's really interesting. And I would love to eventually work with the moon as well. But I'm really more of a sun girly. So then I have some information about the Sabbaths. And then I made a page for Sol, which I had a lot of fun with. I have a little coffee spell. I actually also, because I don't have an altar, okay? I don't have a place for an altar right now. So I thought, you know what? I'm just going to make an altar page in my notebook. So I can use this as like a placemat, I guess, for spells. So if I want to do a spell, I just open up my little grimoire and I'll have it there. And I painted this. Then I have a coffee spell. I have prosperity bowl spell. And here I'm gonna start working on a page spread about chakras. That is everything that I wanted to talk about. And yeah, so the conclusion here, I guess, is what I'm hoping for my witchy practice is reading about like folklore and stories from around here. I want to get to know, learn, and explore deities from the Greek and Norse pantheons, and I want to do spell work. It's mostly going to be like green witchcraft, I guess, with the herbalism. But I am just excited to explore. I am not gonna hone into one certain path for right now. I just want to see what I feel comfortable with. I want to see what works for me. So yeah, I would love to hear what your witchy path has looked like. If you feel inclined to share, if you want to share how you are moving forward. Maybe there are some people here on YouTube who you've been watching, who you look up to, who inspire you in your own crafts. And I would love it if you could share it here in the comments with us. So I hope you enjoyed this first episode of It's a Witchy Life podcast. I wanted to have it a little bit more casual. And this is not a podcast that's gonna come out every week, probably like bi-weekly, maybe. That's what I'm thinking at least. Okay. So I would love it if you could subscribe to my channel if you want to see more of these podcasts. I also do a lot of tarot chats, all that fun stuff. And click the video on the screen right now to watch another one of my videos. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!